Sometimes when you're driving down the road all by yourself, you begin to hear a voice that tells you need to look around, pay attention. Maybe something isn't quite right. That voice is me. It's the voice of Gord. Hey everybody, welcome back. How's it going? Quick little intro. Next guest here on Voice of Gord. Again, I recorded this a couple of months ago, but I've been trying to write the book and life is busy here at the household. Away she goes. Anyway, my next guest is economist at Washington State University, a gentleman by the name of Christopher Clarke, who appeared in a video on YouTube by an organization called Business Explains the World about the differences between the rest of the world's trucks and America's trucks, specifically with their weight capacity. It went super viral. It was all over FreightX. Everyone checked it out. And I thought to myself, I got to track this guy down, given my extensive history in pulling really heavy, long things. Maybe not necessarily in the United States, but you know what I'm saying. So I had a nice, not quite hour-long chat with Professor Clarke. He taught me some stuff. I made some suggestions to him about other academics looking into trucking. Really interesting conversation. I'm going to get him on again here once the manuscript is submitted, perhaps in the fall. I'll chase him down and we'll carry it on because he's a really good, interesting guy. We had a decent exchange, questions going back and forth. I think he's a pretty good dude and has some great questions about why the trucking industry is restricted in the way that it is. And maybe one day we'll fix that component of it up. As you know, I'm working on a book about the fate of the American truck driver in 2025. It's called End of the Road. It'll be coming out in March next year. If you would like to financially assist me in getting it over the finish line, not exactly raining dollars around here. That would be great. I'll have links to that in the show notes. I'll also have at the bottom of every one of my Substack posts is a subscription button. If you're not a subscriber, please go ahead and smash that button. My podcasts and writing will end up in your inbox automatically. There's also a payment option if you feel like I provide some value to your ears or your eyes and you have some excess value to exchange to me. That would be great. It's not required, but it would be nice. As always, questions, comments, suggestions, corrections, and hate mail, you can be directed to gordylocks@protonmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. I almost always write back. Might take me a couple of days, but I usually respond to emails very quickly. It's my preferred method of communication. You can also follow me on Twitter, @GordMagill, GORDMAGILL. If you're a trucker and you enjoyed this show, pass it along to one of our colleagues and comrades. I depend on you guys for word-of-mouth advertising. Like I say, this show is free. I have no advertisers. It's a gift to my fellow drivers. If you could help me spread the word, that would be great. All right, let's get to Professor Christopher Clarke on the question about American truck capacity. All right, good everybody. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of the Voice of Gord podcast project. I'm Gord, and this is my voice. The other voice you're about to hear, I've only just become acquainted with myself through a somewhat viral YouTube video that was forwarded to me by a friend of the show and FreightX meme legend, Mr. Super Trucker, Justin Martin. And it's a video that was like, ask some questions that I've asked and then kind of been attacked for asking them, depending on who I was talking to, about the efficiency of the United States trucking fleet and its infrastructure. And so the gentleman you're about to hear from was the star of that video, the host, as it were, and did a lot of research into it, and is another in a long line of academics I've convinced to appear on this Truckers podcast. Please welcome to the show Professor of Economics from Washington State University, Christopher Clarke.
Hello, thanks for having me. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, pleasure. Like I said, I only saw this video here a little while ago. I think it's still fairly fresh. Like it's only been live for about what, 2 weeks?
Yeah. Less, oh, something like that. Somewhere around 2 weeks. Yeah, we're very blessed. We're a brand new channel. Seeing it going to 1.5 million views is very, very exciting for us.
Oh wow, it's at 1.5 million already.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Very interesting. And so, remind my listeners what's the name of your channel and what was the actual name of the video?
Business Explains the World is the name of the channel. It's part of a new media startup called Dynamo. And just a handful of us. There's a lot of alum coming out of Business Insider, Morning Brew, Cheddar. Kind of. The aim is to create more business journalism, but the aim is all video. So this is going to be a video media kind of journalist company. And the goal with it is to answer big questions of how business explains the world. That's why they contacted me, an economist, an economics professor. Normally don't do too much into the journalist side, but I've always been interested in video economic educational content. So that's the project. The name of the particular video is How America's Trucks Became Inferior to Europe's. That's the title they landed on.
That's those are some fighting words for many of the very patriotic American listeners to this show, whom are about, according to Substack and Spotify analytics, about 60% of my audience.
Nice. Oh, well, I'm American, born in America, love America. I think America is the greatest country on the planet, but we can learn from everybody.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good way of putting it. And I'm from Canada, as most of my listeners know, but I do live in the United States now. I married a lovely American lady, 12 years ago, and been living here full time since 2016.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, how American trucks are inferior to Europe's. Now, there's a meme in sort of trucking Twitter and Twitter a little more writ large where any criticism of anything coming from Europe to America is dismissed as Euro poor. And I think one of the interesting convergences from this sort of online language and reality is trucks, right? And so, as I'm sure you know, and as was evidenced in the video, European trucks are like 99.9% cabovers,
Right. Yeah.
a arrangement design feature of trucks that has been abandoned in the United States almost completely. So
Yeah.
we're talking two opposite design principles for the tractor part of a tractor trailer combination.
Yep.
And I mentioned Super Trucker in the intro. Him and I are very fond of pointing out the lack of detail when it comes to certain journalistic or academic inquiries into the trucking business, because often you'll find that the stock images or little what do you call the little shots that come
Oh,
up,
the
the images.
B-roll stuff. Yeah, that they just
Yeah,
collect from Getty video,
yeah,
whatever,
often it's
Yeah.
often
Yeah.
it's European trucks, and we can tell a mile
Yeah.
away. And
Yeah. Yeah.
the criticism is like, if you guys can't figure out that you used a European truck when you're talking about American trucking, you're going to lose American truckers because they see that you
Yeah.
didn't care
Exactly.
enough to
Yep.
get a photo of an American truck.
Right. So now I have to ask. So I wasn't the editor for this. I worked with an editor. I was the writer and host, of course. But did all our B-roll fall? Was it accurate enough? We tried to pay attention to it, but
Yeah, no, it was good.
good.
I that's why I reached out to you, because so again, my friend Justin sends me this video, and then I finally sat down to watch it, and I was like, holy shit, this guy gets it. Like, I don't say that very often about people who I don't know that are talking about trucking. So congratulations to you, sir.
Well, that's very kind. So I should say what my background is, and it's not trucking. So this was my foray into it. I'm an economist, trained to do public policy, statistical methods. I teach intro to macroeconomics, so I spend a lot of time thinking about inflation and unemployment and stimulus payments and all that. But yeah, trucking was new. The CEO said, "Hey, let's do a video on why American trucks are so badass." And I'm like, okay, well, what's the economic question here? And we came up with why, about the size. I thought the size thing was really interesting. And then I read everything I could from academic journals, from subreddits and everything. So I'm coming at this from where do trucks fit in the big picture of how our economy functions, what makes our modern world so great, and all the little details I've learned in the past 4 or 5 months.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm hoping I can add to that because it seems like you were talking about capacity efficiency, or
Yes,
how
yes.
much can a truck tow down the road in the United States? The the large point of your video was that American trucks stopped growing at some point, but
Yep,
if you go to
1982.
Finland or Sweden or Australia, they've got these huge trucks that like pull way more weight. Same in Canada. We
Yep,
can we
yep,
can go
yep.
over all of those instances, but the standard you're alluding to, the 80,000 pound
The
tandem
federal
tandem
standard.
federal
Yep,
standard
yep.
is for interstate commerce throughout the entire country, and that standard is recognized throughout the entire country. But
Yes,
certain states have their
yes,
own unique little
they do.
variations,
I
and
think
some
Michigan is the biggest one. They allow big trucks too, big long ones too.
yeah. So what Michigan does is Michigan's got this crazy axle rule, and you can have a 48-foot trailer that's nothing but axles from the dolly legs all the way to the rear bumper. And then
Yeah,
you can have the Michigan version of what we call in Canada a B train. So
yeah,
it's
right.
two
Yep,
trailers that hook together on a common fifth wheel. In
yep,
Michigan, those can have a zillion axles, and I think they're allowed to be up to 160 something thousand pounds.
yep, yep, yep.
And that's to service the steel and automotive industries.
Oh, is that why? Actually, I never knew why. Why Michigan was so unique.
Yeah, well, I mean,
It's because of the yeah.
Motown, right? So, like
Right,
back
right.
back in
That
the
checks out.
'60s and '70s, like you're hauling. Detroit is known for all the car plants,
Of course,
but
yeah.
that steel all had to come from somewhere too, right?
Exactly. Yep,
So,
yep,
like basically, like Michigan and then the state of Indiana, Indiana less so. Indiana, you can get these permits, so you go all the way across 94 from Detroit, and then you can jump on US Route 20. Either after I think it's like the last exit in Michigan, you can go south, and then you can run across 20 and go into where all the steel mills are on the south end of Lake Michigan in northwestern Indiana. So,
right.
Burns Harbor, Gary, East Chicago, Hammond, there's all
Yep,
these steel mills and steel processing plants. And you can run one of these Michigan trains or sleds along US Route 20
yeah.
back towards Michigan and then up into Michigan, and away you go.
All right.
That's been a standard thing. I used to do that a lot and then go all the way back to Canada with them. I would take
Oh,
I would take coils from Hamilton, Ontario, where there's two huge steel mills, or
uh-huh.
one now. One of them's kind of mothballed, and
Uh,
then take steel to Chicago with trains, split them up somewhere in Indiana, and then run them in one at a time into places in the sort of Chicagoland area of Illinois.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
Come back to Indiana, bump them together, run into one of the mills in Indiana, and then pick up coils going back to Toronto. It's sort of it doesn't make sense to the outside observer, but different grades of steel, different end uses, different parts. Because there's a whole bunch of automotive plants in Ontario as well that are like stamping out parts for cars.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the whole thing is very complex and interesting, probably to an economist like yourself.
Oh, I mean the big, huge, complex supply chains that we've built increased efficiency tremendously. I mean, the quality of our vehicles, decade after decade, keeps getting better and better, because we're able to be more efficient in the production process. And
I mean,
uh,
they're better in that they might last longer. I don't know with all the extra doodads and safety features and electronics and sensors and stuff. I would argue with you about that. I think they got better. And if we would stop somewhere in the 1990s when you could get a basic pickup truck with arm winding windows and
okay,
manual locks and a 5-speed manual transmission, no frills,
right,
and
right,
get
right.
that for like 15 grand.
Well, yeah, that's a fair point. No, I actually I agree with you on that one. In fact, I own a Ford Maverick, which is of course their new model, and it was only 20 grand. But I've got two kids, so family of four. We fit it's a four-door, so it's a small truck, but it's big enough that we fit comfortably. And for a suburban person who only uses it every once in a blue moon, it's better than a sedan, but it gets 40 miles to the gallon. So it's that Ford is like that's like the only thing of that class. It's like not as expensive as these giant 90,000 beasts that most people don't even use, with all these features that most people don't use. But yeah, no, I don't know why. Well, there's weird regulation reasons, but I think we should have these $12,000, $15,000 no frills, just a work truck, and I think Americans would love it. At least a certain portion of America would just absolutely love that.
Right. Yeah. I'm a Hilux supremacist. But so speaking again of manufactured by Toyota, a Japanese company, let's get back into the outside countries we can learn things from.
Sure.
So we have in the United States, again, we have different states, right? So like Michigan's got the sleds. In the Pacific Northwest, there's an arrangement between like Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, maybe
Down into
Utah.
Utah, Nevada. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
and they run either a triaxle trailer, and they got these little weird lift axles on the tractor and at the back of the trailer, and they're allowed to be 105,500 pounds, or
Yeah.
they run a Canadian B train that's just loaded way less. And then
Yeah.
where I am in New York. So speaking about efficiency,
Yeah.
and like there's the efficiency of the energy we put into moving things, which is I think the point you're getting at with this
Yeah.
video.
Yeah.
People are concerned about the climate. People are concerned about energy efficiency and the cost of energy and how much of it we're using. All that's fine. If you move more stuff for less energy put in, you have less emissions and more savings, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
there are certain like progressive places like New York State that understand
Right.
this. New York, you can get something that's called an R permit, and you can
Okay.
have a tractor and a four-axle trailer, like a Quebec style triaxle, and then a lift or a
Yeah.
self steer, and you can be 117,000 pounds
Oh, okay. But
gross
you got to
weight.
get a special permit for it.
Yeah, but I
Is
mean,
that is that permit hard to get or is it easy to get?
no, I mean they're expensive, but like once you've got
Oh,
it,
they
you've
cost
got it.
money.
I think
Yeah.
I think they're
Oh,
issued
so you get it
annually.
once. Is this is like for a driver who gets it? It's like
It's
like
it's issued to the truck and the trailer. It's issued to the registration of the tractor trailer unit itself.
so you buy it once, but it lasts for
For
5, 10 years or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the length of years, but yeah, so they have these R permits. So like New York State understands that if you have a heavier truck, that truck is moving less times to move the same amount of material, right? Or you
Yes,
like
exactly. Yeah.
you gap it out over time. I think they're starting to. They've got something similar in Ohio, possibly Kentucky, North and South Dakota. You can run Canadian B trains down. I think South Dakota. I've seen these like crazy 248-foot trailers with like a zillion axles on them, kind of like Michigan, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, the point being is that like America has all these little experiments in truck capacity efficiency, but the national standard is stuck in 1980.
1982. Yep.
That's when the 80 grand standard was initiated.
Yeah, so it was kind of hodgepodge kind of over the 70s. I mean, it was initiated by, of course, the oil embargoes and the huge energy shocks that we experienced both in 74 and in 79. So you get, executive orders that kind of came out, but the legislation was being worked on for a while. And Carter massively overhauled the trucking industry. I mean, he's deregulating it in a major way. But in terms of the the 80,000 pound standard, that didn't get formalized till Reagan in 82. But they had been working on this. This has been a whole process going on for that whole decade.
Right. And I recall some old truckers would tell me stories about how certain states would hold out. And I think one of the state of the old standards, particularly Missouri,
Oh.
old school truckers used to refer to it as misery because I think they remained at the 73 280 standard, And if you were trying to like pass through Missouri along Interstate
Ah,
44, you'd have
yeah.
to dodge scales or run at night and hope you didn't get caught
Oh
because
my goodness.
Missouri like held out and held out and held out and still gave guys fines until the feds stepped
Jeez.
in.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of the impetus. It was trying to it wasn't a huge bump up, as you say. I mean, compared to in 1950s they passed a national standard, I think for the first time, at the federal level. They had state standards earlier. But in the 50s they either the 40s or the 50s they passed it at the national standard. And oh, it was a lot lower, like 50,000 or something. But then, yeah, the bump that we got in '82 was an increase. But at the federal level, we basically remained there since. The idea was to make it standard, and then they had to just kind of negotiate all this with all the different states. Here in Washington, we I from a friend of a friend. Here in the economics department, we grow a lot of potatoes here. We're not known for that, but Washington also grows a lot of potatoes. And the potato farmers wanted to load their trucks as much as they could. But they have to load them not according to Washington standards or others, but they load them according to the state that has the lowest limit. So all the other states that have higher limits, they can't take advantage of that if they're going to pass through that state. They basically have to do their whole fleet according to the lowest common denominator.
Right. Yeah. And that's why you don't see uh, a sort of weird four-axle trailer from Washington State over here in Pennsylvania,
Yeah,
or a Canadian B train going all the way down to Florida.
yeah.
Um, in your video, you highlighted some uh, projects in Finland and Sweden.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean the whole EU, but this is Finland is kind of taking the lead on this. Sweden is doing it as well. And I think a lot of Scandinavia is going to start adopting this. And the EU, I don't think the EU will ever go to the same level as Finland, but I think they're even looking at making it larger. So Finland's been doing this for a decade now. Or maybe 15 years now. And they were what I'm impressed by it is they were very, very careful about it. They ran these experiments. We talked to the scientist who, one of these scholars who was running these. Where my favorite one is the bicycle ones because that's the most vulnerable vehicle you can imagine on a road. So here you are, you're a bicycle on a road, and what's it like to being passed by a semi truck? Well, God. I mean that's terrifying, right?
Lots of wind.
Yeah. And they found that the length of the truck is not the thing that mattered from the perspective of the bicyclist. But of course, it was, well, how close are they traveling? What's the speed they're traveling? That kind of stuff. And so they realized we shouldn't be regulating the weight and the length. That has nothing to do with the relative safety between these things. And then they also instituted other things like their skirts, along the bottom of the truck. So that would help lower some of the wind impact. There's more camera requirements. And of course, today, because it's 2025, we have these super cheap like laser systems now that increase the safety of it. So increase cameras, increase brake requirements, along it, and then increase these kind of laser automatic systems. They have found, and again, they've done this research for over a decade, that it's not a compromise in safety to increase the length and the weight.
Right. Now, you mentioned all the tech. Was
Yeah.
there a was there a concurrent study or examination about the skill level of the operator behind the wheel in Finland?
Yeah, my impression, so someone could correct me if I'm wrong. My impression is they get paid more and it is more difficult to do. So to do what they call HCTs, high capacity trucks.
Is it a separate license in Finland? You have to get to do that in Finland?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that one.
Right. So one of the things I'm a very big critic. I don't want to say that like I'm against all technology. I'm not a total Luddite, but I am kinda. Um, well, a lot of this stuff gets imposed because they don't want to teach people how to do things better.
Sure.
And I mean, this will connect to where I'm going to take the conversation later. So bear with me.
All right.
Um, like it's great. Okay, cool. You got your lasers, you got your under ride protection, you got your advanced braking systems, whatever. That's fine. But
Yeah.
like the biggest safety factor in any vehicle, whether it's a high capacity Finnish truck or a guy on a bike or a guy on a motorcycle here or me driving my pickup truck down the road, is the
Yeah.
guy behind the wheel, right? Like
Of course. Of course. Yeah.
yeah, we have a big problem here in the United States where they don't believe in that anymore. They don't believe in training. They don't believe in paying people. So it's interesting that
Uh,
about the same time as your observed federal standard weight capacity problems start happening, a few years later, another problem starts happening that's related, and that's on the human side of this, right?
okay.
Because in 1980, Jimmy Carter passes the Motor Carrier Act of 1980.
Right.
I'm sure you've studied that as an economist,
Yeah. Yeah.
and as part of your research for this piece. One of the things that does is it opens the entire trucking market up to anybody. Anybody with a pulse, you got $300. You can sign up for an MC number. You don't have to
Sure.
have any trucking experience. You can get an MC number, buy a truck, hire a driver, and start a trucking company. It's a total open free market now.
Okay.
There's arguments for and against that. I'm mostly for it.
Okay.
I think some of the excesses and externalities that has caused in the last 4 decades haven't been dealt with correctly.
Okay.
But the regulated regime before Carter came along and changed it was it was very it was hard on the economy. It was a drag on the economy. It made
Yeah.
life very
Yeah.
difficult for small business truckers to
Yes,
expand their
exactly. Yep.
operations, to find
Yep.
different customers. I'm going to have a whole chapter in my book I'm writing about this.
Nice.
But anyway, deregulation comes along, and increased competition means lower rates. Lower rates means drivers start getting paid less. Way she goes.
Yep.
Um, so instead of the market reacting to drivers starting to quit in the 1980s,
Okay.
a lot of like guys who grew up in the regulated market were like, I'm not doing this anymore. And they went to pursue another field of endeavor. Okay,
Sure.
fine.
Sure.
The trucking industry in the mid to late 1980s starts this meme or complaint, as it were, the truck driver shortage, because guys were quitting and it was difficult to attract new talent to come to drive a truck when they had just gone through this deregulatory program, which forced all the rates down, increased competition. So it was more difficult for a trucking company owner to pay their drivers an adequate salary, right? Okay, that's a problem. What has happened, though, since that is that the government, right, was listening to all these trucking company owners, especially the big ones, who are members of what's called the American Trucking Association.
Okay.
The ATA is a corporate lobby group that represents very large carriers, and they have been complaining about a truck driver shortage since 1987. It starts popping up in the media a lot.
All right.
And if you, sir, are an economist,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
if there is it possible for there to be a natural shortage of anything in a market economy that's functioning as a market economy?
Well, there's always frictions. That's so in your theoretical, like you put your two lines on the paper and supply and demand. No. But that's assuming zero frictions. That's assuming equal bargaining power. That's assuming full information. Life always puts fictions. And so one of the goals, right? So one of the goals of policy, one of the goals of government is to create a system that lowers those frictions. So that's why we have, we enforce contracts because if you can write a contract that helps the mark, people will make deals easier. People complain that the United States has too many lawyers, and maybe we do, but lawyers help us enforce contracts.
Right.
So it lowers the frictions of markets. So you need to have a certain amount. Um, and so yeah, to your question, is it a quote unquote trucking shortage because of frictions? I don't know. I mean, lobbyists are going to say a certain thing to say a certain thing. There's a very easy solution to most shortages, and that's to increase the price. So in the
Right.
case of labor, the price of labor
Well,
is, of course,
the
is a wage. So
yeah.
pay them more, and you don't have a shortage.
Funny you mention that, because the paying people more always seems to be a problem in America, or at least it's perceived as such, especially by our friends on the left and on the working class left in unions. That's fine. They're correct. Everyone's a capitalist until the price of labor gets bid up. And
Uh-huh.
and and
That's funny.
and what's happened is that the trucking industry was like, okay, cool, we're shedding our drivers and we can't keep them around. So how do we get more drivers? the
Pay
new
more.
the new and novel method was to get the government to pay for truck driving schools,
Oh,
and then
right,
also lower the
right, right.
requirements to get CDLs.
Right, right. But now you're gonna burn through, and this is a problem, right? We're burning through a lot of drivers who didn't get enough training. They start on the road. They don't do well. So this actually happened to my uncle. As he got his CDL license, got his, I don't know, the 6 week course, 9 week course, whatever it was that was subsidized by the government. But then within a few months, he had an accident or two because he was, frankly, he was still learning, and it wasn't quite ready yet, and he's out of the industry. So we're burning through potential people too quickly.
Right. Yeah. So while I'm here, I'm going to give a shout out to previous guests of this show and people whose work you have probably heard of. And if you haven't, here's some stuff you should chase down.
Yeah.
Professor of economics at University of Minnesota Morris, Stephen Burks.
Okay.
He's University of Minnesota Morris has got a whole school dedicated to studying trucking labor market stuff. Go check him out. He's got 30 or 40 papers. He hasn't written
Nice.
any, hasn't got any books out, but like he's
What's his
just
name again? Boris
Stephen V. Burks,
Burks.
Burks.
Burks. All right.
Then there's a fellow who wrote a book in 2000 called Sweatshops on Wheels:
Uh-huh.
Winners and Losers in Trucking Deregulation. Economics professor at Wayne State University in Michigan by the name of Michael Belzer.
Okay.
That's sort of a seminal work on this subject.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then there's a lady nearby me. I'm 8 miles outside of Ithaca, and Cornell University is home to the Industrial Labor Relations School,
Yeah.
and also home to a professor by the name of Karen Levy, who wrote a book a couple of years ago called Data Driven Trucking Technology in the New Workplace Surveillance, which studied the effects of electronic logbooks and driver facing cameras and all this new and wonderful stuff
Yeah.
we are supposed to tolerate as humans behind the wheel.
Okay.
Great book, highly recommended reading. So yeah, those guys have all looked at this and then said the same thing you did: just pay more.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you don't need to be a genius. We all agree. So it's pretty straightforward.
Now, some parts of the market do that, right? Like if you're in a niche sector of trucking, um, if you're hauling food grade liquid tankers, hazardous materials, oversized, overdimensional loads with escorts and trip planning, and you got to have your brain turned on a little bit more.
Yeah.
Customers are a little more leery and concerned about who's actually behind the wheel.
Yeah.
Those parts of the industry will pay more.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
The world of general freight, where you're just pulling a box trailer around at 80,000 pounds or
Yep.
less, often less, yeah, that doesn't pay so good. And the government has spent 30 plus years subsidizing, 40 years now, subsidizing the production of truck drivers. And nowhere does anybody ever stop and ask, where are all these drivers going? And is the taxpayer getting value for their money by giving money to these schools? Right. So I have
Right.
I have a theory.
Okay.
I am not an economist. I barely finished high school. I'm just a truck driver. Okay.
Okay.
My theory is this: is that this system, okay, where the government subsidizes training schools, has been internalized into the cost structure of a lot of these large carriers. And thus, I have called this a system of stealth corporate welfare, which is masked as a jobs program, right?
Well, yeah, so the logic's right. The question is kind of you got to test it in the real world and say what are these magnitudes? So, I mean, I work at a university. I work at a public university, which we educate the future employers of tomorrow. So, are we subsidizing the corporations and all the businesses and the engineering firms who hire all our students? Sure. But then the question is, who's getting the benefit from the education? Because the other people getting a benefit from it are, of course, the students themselves, because the students themselves will earn a higher wage, and so we're helping out the workers here, and so people kind of like that. But then there's kind of another benefit to just the education enterprise in general is when you have a more educated population, you have less crime, you have better health, you have better
Sure.
volunteering,
I don't
all these other nice
I
things.
wouldn't question that, but I guess
but specifically for the trucking industry. So who's benefiting from it? Are the big firms benefiting? Probably some, yeah. But the workers themselves receive a benefit because they get training and experience. They
at
get
least for
navigate
the
the job.
first few months until they realize they're getting hosed and then they quit.
Yeah, and they leave. Yeah, but then the Amer
You do realize that the trucking industry has got a massive turnover and retention problem, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. But the third people who benefit from this are the consumers. Because if the trucking industry is competitive and all these trucking firms are competing with each other, they have lower rates to transport things, and that will turn into lower consumer prices for the end goods at the end of the line. So everyone is going to get some of the benefit. The question is, it's you got to test it and see who exactly is getting the share of it.
Right. So we'll bring it back to the questions about capacity.
Yeah,
So one of the reasons this retention problem takes place and driver turnover is an issue is because where trucks interact with their customer facilities, loading and unloading,
yeah,
another long running problem in the trucking industry is detention, which then bleeds into retention. So truck drivers end up spending an inordinate amount of their time, and therefore the capacity, that piece of equipment, that truck, is
yep,
also sitting, not being used. And then for most drivers, they're not getting paid for that time waiting, right? Um,
right.
Mostly because the industry has built this standard pricing thing around that every rate they quote, it's understood that 2 hours loading and 2 hours unloading is on the house free.
Yeah,
Usually it's longer, and
yeah.
there if it goes longer, there's no guarantee that the driver gets paid anything. And because so many facilities, there's no incentive and there's no legal requirement under the law
Okay.
to honor a driver's time. And so there's a piece of legislation that was proposed a couple of years ago in 2022, and it's called the Guaranteeing Overtime for Truckers Act.
Okay. And it's federal.
Yeah. So what it
Okay.
would do is truck drivers are not, you don't have to pay them overtime under federal labor law. In 1938, Fair Labor Standards Act, there was an exemption put in there for truck drivers and other transportation workers, right?
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Not time and a half, does not apply to them.
Right.
It's
Right.
been there since forever.
Yeah.
So if that exemption was removed, which is what the Guaranteeing Overtime for Truckers Act does. There's no pork,
Right.
there's no tax, there's no new regulation.
Well, it's
The
just a very simple thing.
the
Short.
entire act removed that line from the 1938 Fair Labor Standards Act.
Yeah.
Now, truckers' time is going to be worth more,
Yep.
and
Yep. Yep.
therefore companies are going to have to
They'll have an incentive.
they
Yep.
have to extract that cost from their customers, who would then hopefully get the trucks moving. Now, this gets into the efficiency thing and academia. So
Okay.
there's a guy I'm trying to get on my podcast, and he's sort of a little bit cagey about speaking to the public right now because he was working for USDOT, then not, then got rehired. Sort of like confusion about
Uh,
Trump
oh,
and
the
all
recent
that.
past few months. Oh,
Yeah,
that's a tough. Yeah, he's in a tough spot. Yeah.
yeah. So, but anyway, prior to his employ at the government, he
Yeah.
worked for MIT.
All right.
MIT has this sub school called MIT Freight Labs, which studies logistics and supply chains. And this guy's name is David Carell.
Okay.
His research was cited by President Biden in 2021.
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
that talked about the fact that truck capacity and drivers' time is wasted, and that drivers only on average get to drive so many hours a week because they're held up everywhere they go, and
Right.
there's nothing to prevent them being held up. So over and above the fact we're only hauling 80 grand, we're only actually using our capacity time wise to a certain
All right.
percentage because
Right.
everyone's getting held up everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
of course the Biden administration, instead of taking the study and work of Professor Carell, and they also talked to Belzer, and they talked to another trucking academic, a guy by the name of Steve Shelley, and said, what should we do here? Because during 2021, during COVID, there was a demand spike and everybody wanted trucks because
Yes.
everyone's
Yes.
ordering stuff
Yes.
on Amazon.
Yep.
What does the Biden administration do? Instead of doing anything to force companies to do something about the time and capacity wastage that goes on with truckers waiting at facilities to get loaded or unloaded.
Yep.
Instead of paying drivers more to attract more people to the job, the Biden administration made a deal. This is the theory. I'm not able to prove this, but
Okay.
some friends of mine have done the studies on the issue of CDLs that indicate there's a problem. Is in 12 months, the Biden administration flooded the trucking market with all kinds of people from outside the country. So typically in a year, the CDL school system, whether that's a private trucking school, a trucking company with their own school, a polytechnic, whatever,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
you'll produce between 400 and 450,000 new CDLs a year. Biden does this thing in 2021, and the following year it's 876,000
Okay. I
without
mean, we were
with
in the middle of a so your hypothesis is where is he getting these additional where is he getting the people to double it?
right. And then what was the effect of that? Because after the COVID demand spike fell, right?
Yep, yep, yep.
Tr-
By the time you get to 2023.
yeah, yeah, 2022, late 2022,
Yep,
2023.
yep, yep.
The demand has like flatlined, but now there's just all these truck drivers here, many of them from other countries that are going, well, we're just going to stay. And now
Sure.
the trucking industry has gone through what they call the Great Freight Recession.
Huh, sure.
And it's not necessarily that there's a recession. It's just that like the capacity is way, way, way over capacity in number of trucks and number of drivers. And that capacity was juiced by Biden in 2021 artificially.
Okay.
So, like, basically, I'm asking you as an economist, like, market function with, it's going to do its thing, but basically, trucking on the driver and human labor side of it keeps being interfered with by the government, subsidizing CDL schools, reducing requirements to get a license, allowing all these refugees and migrants to enter the trucking business when previously that didn't happen, and then failing to do anything about capacity.
What percent do you think were international
Well,
workers?
this is hard to track because
Right. I
you
meant,
know,
yeah.
well, so back to the CDL mill thing. Steve Shelley, sociologist at University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, wrote a book in 2016, Big Greg, Trucking the Decline of the American Dream. And he's been doing a bunch of other research ever since. And he was asked to take part in this like study working group for the state of California.
Yeah.
State of California Agricultural Department. Hey, we can't get truck drivers. What's the problem? What are we doing wrong? Vaselli and a colleague went and did all the work. And while he was doing that, he was also trying to answer this question about what is the taxpayer getting for this? So they start asking states, right?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
you guys spent $7 million this year on CDL training.
Right.
Do Can you tell us how many of those drivers are still
Are
registered
still
to drive, are
driving.
still
Yep.
driving?
Yep.
And the states were very reluctant to cough up that information. Some didn't have it. Some wouldn't cooperate. Some
Yeah.
wouldn't say how much money they've spent. So, like, to get an actual accurate picture of these questions, and believe me, there's a lady who's going to listen to this. Her name is Grace Sharkey. She works for an organization called Freightwaves.
Hi,
She was
Grace.
she was asking me the other day, like, hey, have you guys got any data? And it's like, it's actually hard to get because it's spread across all these states.
Oh, I know. So it's not standardized. Yeah.
Some of them are cooperative, many are not.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, they don't even know. They just threw money at something and then accountability with taxpayer money.
Sure. So the conclusion is we don't know. Yeah, well, this is an empirical question. So you would have to do the very, very careful research and test it to know one way or the other. I mean, there's general principles that subsidizing education generally pays off. But if if the turnover rates are huge, then the returns on that education is pretty minimal because trucking education is not like a general degree where you learn, your English and math and kind of these general subjects. It's very specific. It's a very specific skill. And if they're not using that skill, 10 years down the line, 5 years down the line even,
One
then
year down the line.
Oh, then absolutely that would be a waste. Yeah. Yeah.
We have carriers in the United States who have in excess of 100% total turnover per every year.
Oh, that's absurd. I'll just there's no way to say that that's a good system. I mean, some people look at this is a totally different industry, but some people look at Amazon, and Amazon has a huge turnover rate, and that's all by design. Like that's kind of how they want it. And they've been able to be a company for a while now, and it seems to be okay. But you don't have to go get a specialized license in 6 weeks, 9 weeks, whatever training to work at Amazon, So you're right. If this is something that requires skill and we have to invest, in economics we call it, we invest in human capital. Human capital can't be traded on a market. Once you learn a skill, it's inside your head, and you can't trade that. You have to actually perform it. It's inside that human being forever. So, yeah, this would be a waste. It would be a waste. So then, what's the solution? Is the solution that we no longer subsidize the education, or are there other things that we can think about to prevent that turnover from happening?
Right. Well, I would offer and suggest one, and again, I'm going to talk to Professor Carell about this. What
Yeah.
do we do to increase the time capacity utilization of the existing trucking market? Right. And then the question you guys posed in your video, how do we make the trucks themselves more high capacity, right? What
Yes, yes, yes. Because then they would be getting paid more if the trucks were bigger. Yeah, I did. The kind of pushback I would get from some truckers is they'd say, "Oh, they don't pay us by the pound," and I'm like, "Yeah, but in a general equilibrium market situation, all these forces would come together. The value of your load goes higher, and therefore companies would be willing to pay you more. And as long as the market is functioning, as long as we have enough competition going both ways, the new equilibrium will be a higher wage."
Right. Now, I'm going to
Yeah.
share my own personal anecdote and then I'm going to steel man our interlocutors' arguments. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm from Canada. I started out driving B trains,
Okay.
140,000 pounds. I also spent a year driving logging trucks in New Zealand, two
Okay.
45 footers in the Kangaroo off highway system. And
Oof.
then I was driving road trains in Western Australia, 345-foot trailers.
Yeah, those things are so cool. Oh my God.
So yeah, I drove one of those for over a year, and
Yeah.
yeah, you have to get comfy being driving slow because
Okay. Okay.
tires get really upset on hot pavement under load. So
Sure.
and the engines get upset if you push them too hard, and then the AC doesn't work.
Uh,
So you drop a gear, maybe a gear and a half, and you kind of sit and be very happy to do 50 miles an hour instead of 65.
I see. I see. Okay.
And then you get better fuel efficiency, that, and then your tires last longer, and you're not on the side of the road fixing them yourself. Because in Australia, you change your own tires. You don't just call
Ah,
Bridgestone or whoever to come out and help you when there's
right.
700 miles northeast of Perth out in the desert.
So I have to interrupt to just to ask what it's like, because I mean I saw the data. The population density is just a fraction. But as I ask in my video, I've driven across Wyoming. I've driven across parts of the Dakotas or Montana or West Texas. What how rural is it when you're driving these road trains in Australia compared to the most rural places in Canada or the United States?
It's pretty desolate,
Even more so than what you than more so than Wyoming.
even more than Wyoming. Yep.
Oh, right.
There's way
Wow.
less traffic.
Yeah.
The only on what they call the Nullarbor Highway, which goes between Port Augusta and South Australia and Perth, where the like sort of longest straight stretch of highway and rail line is. There's enough traffic between Sydney and Perth along the bottom that it's not like you're not constantly seeing traffic, but I wouldn't. The scenery is desolate, like there's nothing out there,
Yeah.
but like there's enough traffic coming and going that you're not like lonely or anything. But if you're going up the guts of like up the Stewart Highway towards Darwin, Alice Springs and Darwin, less traffic, way less traffic, even more desolate. And
Wow.
then on the West Coast, I mean, there's enough traffic that you could reasonably expect, like if you stood on the side of the road in the middle of the day, let's say between Carnarvon and Dampier somewhere, or maybe like Newman and Meekatharra, one truck every 15-20 minutes is going to come by.
Okay.
At
Okay.
night it would be way less.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
but it's not, yeah, there's just nothing, like Australian truck drivers carry little mini barbecues and they all have a fridge and a freezer.
Ah, there you
And
go.
like quite often you pull over on the side of the road and cook your own food because it's hundreds of kilometers between roadhouses.
Between towns.
And
Wow.
then the roadhouses, because of their very nature of being remote and everything costs more to
Yeah,
deliver it there.
absolutely. They're going to be monopoly prices.
Yeah, getting dinner is going to cost you $40, you know?
Oh,
So
heavens.
yeah.
Yeah, so I grew up in Nevada and my wife is from northern Nevada. So I grew up in Vegas and she's from northern Nevada. So we would make that drive. And yeah, central Nevada, that's one of the more rural places I've ever been to as well.
Yeah, Central Nevada would look like many parts of outback Australia.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so yes, high capacity trucks. I was paid more, right?
Okay.
I when the every company, maybe I lucked out, but every company I worked for passed along some of the efficiency gains to the driver, right? Like I would get a higher mileage for pulling trains. When I was in Australia, I was paid by the hour, and I got a per
Okay.
diem. And when I was in Alberta, pulling train loads of fuel, that was like my highest paying job ever. You know, I made tons of money, and then I moved to New York State, and like there's employers around here trying to pay you less than minimum wage to drive truck. It's just ridiculous.
Wow.
So I would think that like if we have an honest functioning market and we have, you know, that equilibrium you talked about and honest operators, and then all of a sudden, let's say everyone in the United States is now running on a New York R permit model where you're allowed to be like 100,000 or 110,000 or whatever.
Right, 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 right.
The system becomes more efficient. There's a little bit more cake in there to give to the drivers.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
now to steelman the arguments of the people who are against that, one of whom is OIDA, the Owner Operator Independent Drivers Association. I'm friends with some people there.
Okay.
They oppose this
Okay.
because they believe, and I think rightly so, it's not that they think that like drivers or companies would get screwed out of this. They believe that the trucking industry in America is so far gone down the lane of corporatism, and that some of the huge carriers have got so much leeway in Washington that any increase in capacity would necessitate the purchase of equipment that only large companies would be able to afford. And then those large companies would naturally monopolize the market again, and that the benefits to owner operators and smaller companies would be more difficult to accrue. I don't
Okay.
know that I necessarily agree with them about that.
Not sure
However,
either. Yeah.
because of the sort of corporatist model where it concerns the human resources side of it, and I believe it's a corporatist model because of government interference in the labor market side of trucking and the sheer size of some of the mega carriers, like I'm sympathetic to what they're saying.
Interesting. Well, the my first question would be why aren't the mega carriers pushing for it if it would advantage them so much?
That is a good question. I don't know. Maybe the people that run the mega carriers deep down inside know they haven't got the talent for it. Because the thing is when you've got heavier, longer trucks, the public is going to demand a more talented, skilled operator for the safety part of it.
Sure, sure,
And
sure.
they have spent 40 years whittling away at professional drivers by their nonsense with CDL mills and, you know, demands for in-source labor and reduced requirements. And like there's truck driving schools, you said 6 to 9 weeks, there's truck driving schools operating in the United States right now that will give you your CDL after 3 weeks of training.
Right, right. But it seems well, I'm trying to see where's the bottleneck, where's the constraint? Um it still seems like if they would benefit, they would still do it. I mean, because the point you're making is they're hardly even paying for the truck driving schools to begin with. So it seems that say, hey, let's. I could see a legislation package that they would support that would say more funding for CDL schools, combined with higher truck capacity. I could see both of those going hand in hand if it would benefit them, and if it does benefit them, the lobbyists would support it.
When you were doing your research for this video, you probably would have come across something called the bridge law.
Remind me.
So one of again the people who don't want to expand trucking capacity keep citing this thing called the bridge law that says like the way engineering is done for overpasses and bridges
Oh
is
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
weight has to be spread out.
I thought so. My understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I thought just axle requirements help handle that. Because when I talk to anybody about Norway, that's my first question. I'm like, your infrastructure isn't like, the roads aren't super wide. They don't have special infrastructure. They just say as long as you have axle requirements, it can the bridges and things can handle longer and heavier trucks. That's why they're longer, because then you spread the weight out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean, that's why they do their Pacific Northwest thing, right? That's why they get their
Yes,
105.5 and their strange calculation and their little lift axles because they're trying to like bridge that weight
yes,
out,
yes, 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 yes,
right?
yes, yes, yes.
Same in Canada, like in the province of Ontario, it's got all these weird laws, kind of like Michigan, where you can, depending on the length of your trailer and the spread of your axles, you'll get more
Yeah.
weight.
We have to wrap up, but I want to finish that point. If the axle requirements solve the bridge law, are the bridge laws really a barrier in the way of increased capacity?
I don't know. I need to interview an engineer, never mind a professor.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Again, because I that was one of my questions too. I was like, well, these things are heavier. It'll wear down our infrastructure. And I did my dissertation on infrastructure and the fact that we're not spending enough on it. And we passed that huge infrastructure bill. It was bipartisan. That was great. But when it comes to actually doing it, we're not building. We're not spending, and we're not because there's just too much red tape in the way. So I think this is just kind of feeding into that red tape is slowing down our increased capacity, our increased efficiency, and for the whole economy, our prosperity.
I would agree with that. I'm not a fan of red tape either. Professor Clarke, where can people find you? And what have you got in the pipe for any further work regards trucking?
So I'm in lots of places. I have a TikTok channel, Econ Chris Clarke, and Clarke. There's an E at the end. Econ Chris Clarke, but I'm on everywhere. Insta, Twitter, TikTok. I'm doing this thing with Business Explains the World. Our next project is about shipping. Shipping with big waves in the North Sea. So not quite trucking, but still kind of transportation related. But I make content about the quality of our infrastructure and our economy in general all the time on Econ Chris Clarke.
Right. Well, Professor, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
I'll have to get you back on. I want to talk more about this like Scandinavian high capacity thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool to see, especially Finland, this country of 5 million people being a world leader and trying to make it a standard to basically double the size of the trucks compared to what we see in America.
Yeah,
Uh,
they're doing the same thing in New Zealand, relatively similar population. So
yep, yep,
anyway,
yep.
for our next chat, but in the meantime, thank you very much,
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. I learned a ton.
and way of the road.